Hi there, and welcome to Canceling COVID. So glad to have you join us yet again as we bring you real talk, real resources, and of course, we are working to address issues in our community. Still dealing with this pandemic, of course, and we're starting to see an uptick on the cases, starting to see an uptake, and want to make sure that we're giving you the information that is needed to keep you informed because, again, this pandemic is with us and continues to present itself in so many different ways. Of course, I'm Tanya Rivens, and we take just a few minutes of your time every week to talk about issues in the community. We've got Groundwater Solutions Genesis Project joining us in just a few moments, but a little cloudy here in the Queen City. Big change from what we've been experiencing, which is really hot, hot weather. A pleasant change. We're in the month of August, and a lot of people, our young people, our future, getting ready to head back to school. And so we want to continue to keep them informed and keep them encouraged as well as they navigate and deal with all the different things that we have going on. So COVID's still the topic of concern. We've been talking about monkeypox, bringing you some information about that as well. But the whole issue of COVID not going anywhere. And so we're just going to have to make adjustments. It's been over 2 years now, and we've shown that we can adapt, and we'll continue to do that. And we have some great professionals that are coming along for the journey that help to share information. We're going to mix it up just a little bit today because I'm a country girl at heart, and I tell people that all the time. Cornelius, Lake Norman area is certainly not what it is today, what it was when I was growing up. But the Farmers Almanac, we have some property we call the farm. We still love going over there. We still love hanging out over there. The big rocks, the trees, all of those things, when we were young, not thinking about all the hazards that we were exposing ourselves to. But certainly I remember my uncle, and all the farming that was being done and the cows, and you know what I'm talking about if you're from the country. But along those lines, just farmers and just to value our elders, our ancestors, just being able to utilize what God had provided us with to survive. And those traditions are certainly things that we can still refer to today. So what does that have to do with canceling COVID? Well, a whole lot, because we can learn a lot from what has been used in the past, a lot of traditions, again, to help us navigate. And along those lines, I have to reach out because I always love referring to the Farmers Almanac. My good friends there and Miss Sandy Duncan, I appreciate her oh so much, and I love it when I get my little book in the mail. So first of all, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. Very well, thank you. I hope you're the same.
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's a Tuesday, so we just keep on making it work. It seems like your days are like this, you kind of get whiplash with so much going on. So, but I appreciate you. The Farmers Almanac, it's titled as your year-long guide to great living, and I really love that because it is a guide. And who amongst us don't need some assist right now as we're navigating everything that's being thrown at us? And I'm sure you would agree with that as well.
Absolutely. I think, when people hear Farmers Almanac, they think like it's a publication, a magazine, but it's really a calendar, a guide. It's a year-long thing. We have the weather forecast. We have calendars that tell us about the best days to plant your garden. We have information about best days to go fishing. We really are a guide to good living. So to help you plan your year for the year ahead, pretty much.
But you have more than that in there as well, Ms. Duncan. You've got a lot of great references in there. I mean, kind of touch on some of the other things because, we're dealing with this pandemic. You're dealing with this pandemic. And then you get this little jewel of a book that I might add, had put up here right now. Share some other things that are inside.
Sure. So, the life hacks are something that a lot of people look forward to. And with everybody wondering about the cost of heating oil and what's going on this winter, one of the favorite hacks this year is bubble wrap. Did you know that you could use bubble wrap on your windows to help keep the cold air out? And all you have to do is spray the glass with water, put the bubble size up, and it'll stick, and it won't look the best, but it'll help you avoid some of that draft coming in. Along those lines, we also talk about how you can freeze. You can freeze a lot of things if they go on sale, or if you maybe you have your own chickens and you have a lot of eggs, you can freeze eggs. And we talk about how to do that. You can't freeze them in the actual shell because they'll explode, but you crack them into a muffin pan and then you put them in the freezer take them out, put them in a baggie, write the date on it, and then you could use them up to a year later. So it's a really good, convenient source. We also talk about, like when good food seems to go bad, if you ever pull out your onions and there's a little bit of black mold on them,
Hmm.
most of the time you shouldn't eat any type of mold. And if you're allergic to mold, throw them out. But if
Right.
not, you can actually rinse them off, cut it out, and you could use that onion. Similar to, I don't know if you've ever cracked an egg open and there's a little blood spot in it. And
Hmm.
some people get all nervous that this is not good for you, but it's really not that bad. It doesn't mean the egg is bad. You could still eat it. So we just give people advice about how to live in harmony or a little bit more in tune with nature so that you don't waste food, or you don't waste money, or you don't waste energy.
So all of that again in this book, you have got to be like one of the coolest people to ever know because of all these little things that everybody wish they could do because you save. And right now, with everything so expensive, and it seems like an aha moment, but who would ever have known some of the things that you've always shared? So let's talk some of the things that address maybe around natural resources, especially when it comes to health and wellness. What can you speak on that?
Sure. So a couple things too. We do have a story this year about just I'm trying to think of the vegetables that you can grow even without a backyard. So I know it's a little late for this year, but if you want to check out which are the top vegetables that if you have a balcony or a little bit of a windowsill that you want to grow, we talk about that. We also talk a little bit about climate change and little things that you could do yourself to help with
Mhm.
climate change. Be it even like little things like maybe you didn't think about, well, like where is your bank or any of your investments putting their money? And if they don't agree with what you want to be with, you should change it.
Right.
Even to the fact of like, sometimes we forget about things, and I think it's becoming more and more, but packaging. I mean, the dental floss you buy, that stupid plastic thing. Is there a better way to buy dental floss? And is there a better way that you can, stop buying the plastic and pick something else? So we talk about that. We also
Mhm.
talk about acorns. Acorns are the pain in the neck, especially as we get to fall season.
Yeah.
Um, but do you know that you can actually eat acorns? It's a long process and you have to have some time, but you can collect them, and that we explain how to do it. The same as black walnuts. The black walnuts are popular around here. So we talk a little bit about that. So yeah, it's a mixed things. We also talk about repelling ticks. Ticks are a big issue, especially in the Northeast.
Yeah.
We talk about natural remedies, so you don't have to go always buy deep, that kind of stuff, as well as mosquito remedies if you're out and about and the mosquitoes are bad. We have listings of frost dates. If you have a little bit of a garden and you want to know when the latest, you can keep an eye out for them, or what to do when it gets to be like a chilly night, and how to bring them inside. And one of the stories we've started, this is a little more historical or serious. We've tried to highlight some remarkable people who helped turn adversity into opportunity, and we call them the American Trailblazers. So this year we talk about Fannie Lou Hamer.
Mhm.
Who is a sharecropper who turned into a human rights activist. So we try to put a little bit of that in there, and then we have a recipe contest. In fact, if any of your readers have a blueberry recipe, they could go online to farmersalmanac.com and submit it, and they could possibly win some money as well as being published in the almanac. In this year's almanac, we had a honey recipe contest last year's edition, but it's the winners are in this year's editions, and we
Uh-huh.
have really good recipes for honey churro cookies, which we found out was submitted by a sixth grader. How exciting! We had no idea, and he cooks and he bakes for the local community. So kind of a
Oh,
neat story that goes along with
yeah.
that. So yeah, well, like you said, there's just something for everybody. Of course, we have the weather forecast, and new this year, we break the country into 7 zones, and then we have 16 months of weather forecast in there. But we also kind of give a weather summary for all 4 seasons in 2023, winter 22-23. But this year we kind of called it out and put it in a little map format. So if you want to look quickly to see what we're predicting, in case you want to try to plan a vacation next year, or to just plan your budget accordingly, we kind of give tips and advice on that.
It's a great, great guide, and as you're speaking and the stories and, some of the little hacks that we don't even think about, I think about, our forefathers or our ancestors and grandma, great-grandma, great-great-grandma, some of the things that they were able to incorporate, and here you are, you sit and share that. One of the things too, we're headed into the cold season, and you got something there about keeping the pain away and how to handle with the cold weather. So it's just so many neat little things that you don't think about, like what you shared about the eggs, acorns, all of those. We never think about it. And so those people who think they're preparing for the end or people that feel like they just really need some change because they're feeling a little, I guess, lost or concerned or desperate, this is a great guide to just give you some ideas, to help you function. Again, it's the Farmers Almanac 2023. And like you stated already, it's not just for farmers. I
No.
love the section with the calendar planning because I always love to look in here and look, especially when you're planning outdoor events. What a
Right.
great reference to look and see. But also, if you're trying to do not planting maybe so much a garden, but we take pride in our lawns around here, especially in the Carolinas. So if you're trying to figure out, the weed and seed and all of those great things, there's always great references in the almanac. And I appreciate you all so much for that.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. It is fun to work on. And like I said, if you haven't picked up a copy, a lot of people say, as you mentioned, that, it's been around for 200 plus years. So they think
Uh-huh.
that their grandparents read it. But really, it's a guide for everybody, especially if
Yeah.
you are starting out. How do you keep your lawns? We have a reminder about thunder and lightning, like what is really safe or not safe to do when it's thunder and lightning out.
Mhm.
And we have an interesting story about pigeons. Everybody complains about pigeons. But they're actually heroes. They were heroes in World War II, and it's a kind of a fun, fascinating stories about pigeons.
Mhm.
So yeah, we just try to give people ideas. People like to also look up at the moon. So we list up all the full moons in 2023, and in fact, there will be a blue moon next year,
Okay.
August. It won't look blue; it just means the second full moon in a month.
Right.
And we
Right.
also tell people about when to look for meteor showers or when there's going to be an eclipse you can view. In fact, there's an eclipse next year, but the biggest eclipse will be the year after. So it's kind of exciting, just ways to get outside. And, sometimes we live away from nature, but how to reconnect to nature, even if you don't live with a backyard, but, how we should appreciate it and how you can do that. And another fun thing is, so we have this fishing lure. So we have best days to go fishing. But if you don't
Uh-huh.
go fishing, we also have this fishing lure, which is kind of funny. Like you're not supposed to bring bananas on a boat if you're fishing because you won't catch any fish. And you should not talk about rabbits or utter the word rabbits when you're on a boat because you won't catch fish.
Oh,
But,
wow.
but if you want good luck, the first of every month, the first two words you should ever say before you say anything, even if you say good morning to your spouse or significant other, you should say rabbit, rabbit, because supposedly that brings luck. So we have this superstition kind of stuff. And
What happened to the rabbit's foot? No
yeah,
one?
that's why the rabbit rabbit I think
Okay.
comes from that whole rabbit's foot kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Nobody could really say it, but it's this tradition, and I think it's more of a New England tradition. But people are always so fun when we share it on our social media pages or at farmersalmanac.com. They do say they liked it in the first of the month. They like to say rabbit rabbit first of
Yeah.
the month. So might as well try it.
I love that. And just one other point that I wanted to make. Of course, this is canceling COVID, and we talk about just trying to keep everyone informed and making them aware of just suggestions and actually facts, resources. Anything in there that stands out to you that would relate to that topic?
Um, Off
Probably
the
just
top
go
of
on.
my head, just being prepared, I guess. If the winter's coming and obviously, germs and it's not too bad, where you guys are, but just ways to prepare. And as you mentioned, we do have the story about how cold weather can affect your joints and
Mhm.
what to do about it. We do have some, like we have a superfood latte story in there, which is really kind of fun. Everybody calls superfood different things, but we talk about how you can make these with different types of ingredients that help your immune system go on. So yeah, we try to put some natural remedies or life
Right.
hacks and just to give you an idea on how to be prepared. I think that's the biggest thing, how to be prepared and entertained, because also it talks about not saying rabbit rabbit when you go fishing.
So how can people get a copy of this book? This is such a light moment for me, and I love, like I said, I'm a fan, and I always try to get my Farmer's Almanac. So how can people get their copy?
Sure. Well, if you go to farmersalmanac.com, we are having free shipping right now, so it would just be the cost of this.
Yeah.
But as of this week, there should be available at bookstores, Tractor Supply, Dollar General stores. They should be everywhere magazines and books are sold.
Well, we certainly appreciate you. Thank you for always joining me when I reach out. Thank you for the book, most importantly, because I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information because it's been around over 200 years, I believe you said.
Since 1818.
Wow, that's a whole lot of wisdom that's being passed along. And, we got to get back to some of these traditions
Yeah,
anyway. It's so important.
I
All
agree.
right.
And thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you, Miss Duncan. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thanks.
Absolutely. So, a great conversation. Farmers Almanac. Get your copy. You can go to farmersalmanac.com. Trust me, you can find some really cool stuff in there that you probably never even expected. A great opportunity for you to at least find out some little life hacks, a guide to good living. I love how it's phrased that way. And it's just good reading, things that you wouldn't think about. Would you probably freeze some eggs as a way of saving money? Who knows? But there is also some other ideas and suggestions in there, especially the ones about we're heading into cold weather and some of the things that you can do along those lines as well. Well, thank you again to Sandy Duncan, Farmers Almanac, and I'll probably say that again. If you haven't noticed, I bring on Dr. Trasha Black of Groundwater Solutions. They are a sponsor of this show and with us, oh, from day one, always here with us. But one of the things we've been having to do as a result of her schedule is pre-record. So when you see this happening, I don't want you to think, okay, what's really happening here? It just still speaks to our commitment to make sure that she's here speaking along those lines. And what we're getting ready to do now is make a shift and talk about COVID and the latest update with Dr. Trasha Black. So here we go with that conversation happening. And it's canceling COVID and a great conversation with Miss Sandy Duncan. I love the Farmers Almanac, a great way to just keep you encouraged. A lot of non-traditional ways, but they are traditional. So I'll say that again, a lot of traditional ways to just guide you through this thing called life. And we've got so much happening. So who wouldn't want another blueprint, especially when we're going way off script, and a great way to just keep you inspired, encouraged. And I encourage you to reach out to the Farmers Almanac because there are so many ways that you can find ways that have been proven to help you as we continue to navigate all around us and even share with others. Now, along those lines, as we continue, of course, this is canceling COVID, and we cannot have this conversation without bringing on a good reference to everything that we are talking about. As always, none other than Dr. Trasha Black of Groundwater Solutions and Genesis Project. Good morning, and thank you, as always, for taking the time to join us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's so great to see your smile. I tell you, I had a rough Monday, so here we go, Tuesday. Let's make it happen, right?
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, so I always like to check in with you and kind of get the pulse of what's happening. And of course, Groundwater Solutions, 704-596-0505, groundwater-solutions.org. You guys are always doing great things. But let's start with COVID and what's happening. And I think I shared with you, I had someone that I was really surprised at. I know close to my family that passed from COVID. And I go, oh, we're losing people to COVID again because we lost over 1 million people.
Mhm.
And I spoke to a friend of mine who owns a funeral home. And he said, yes, it's starting to pick back up again because it kind of stopped. And now we're starting to see an uptick. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can tell you from our side of the community that we're seeing numbers continue to rise, that it is not over. And I think that, if we had a flashing billboard, we, announced to this community to stay vigilant. We know hospitalizations are up. And if hospitalization is up, then we can, presume that deaths are rising as well. The thing about it is, COVID is a vascular disease. And once a person is hospitalized, the survival rate at hospitalization is low. So that means that their symptoms have gotten so severe that medical attention is needed to sustain life. And it's a challenge once they're inside to reverse all the damage that has been done by the COVID-19 virus.
Well, my thoughts go out to this family and any family dealing with it because the daughter, I attended the memorial service, and one of the most difficult things for me to hear was how, again, she had to say goodbye to her mom through the glass, and it was so painful for everyone. And, I just really wish we didn't have to revisit this again. So a lot of times, again, it's our underlying health conditions.
Exactly. I think that's the key, Tanya, is that we need to address the underlying health conditions, the pre-morbid conditions that we carry. There are families that struggle with diabetes or hypertension, obesity, things like that. And I think at the onset of the pandemic, we all kind of got the light bulb moment and said, we've got to do things to increase our health. I
Right.
believe some of that has, we've laxed up, we've relaxed those self-care strategies that we've implemented and
Mhm.
reversed back to our former ways. So we've got to stay vigilant.
Please tell me that isn't so. We're not come on now. We didn't go backwards.
Well, I don't know that we're backwards.
Okay.
I don't believe that the folks that I surround myself with, the folks that I support in the community, have not reversed all the way back, but
Okay.
they are absolutely less vigilant.
Okay.
We started taking the sea moss, we started taking herbs and vitamins, and I think some of us have continued that. There are lots of folks though who are saying, I'm reinvesting my funds in other things again. And I
Right.
think we just have to reverse those things, but and continue to stay on the path of health. We don't have to live with diabetes. We don't have to
No.
live with those chronic diseases that we think are just in my family history, or they're just because I'm a
Generational.
person of color. We don't have to live like that. We're not designed to. And those are the things that COVID attacks. And because COVID is still here, then we have to stay protective, and we have to stay on the path of health, of reversing those chronic health conditions that our community faces.
So let's just say a little bit of backsliding,
Hmm.
but we certainly can move it back forward with
Hmm.
just a simple nudge to get everyone to get back on
Hmm.
track. Let's
Hmm.
talk about the CDC guidelines that they have now implemented. We lost more than 1 million people, and there have been more than 589 million confirmed cases of COVID 19, 5 million in the past week, according to the latest survey that was released. And we've got at least 223 million that have been vaccinated here in the US. That's 67% of the population. And so these numbers are encouraging.
Hmm.
Over 107 million of those have gotten their first booster shot. And this is all from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data. But what do you think about the new guidelines that were released by them, which says that anyone who has COVID or thinks they may have had COVID, as far as the new isolation, one of them is that if you're unvaccinated and have not received the booster shots, to quarantine after any potential exposure. But the whole need for social distancing, that has kind of been changed. And, we've got cases rising all around. I'm just your thoughts on how this is working, because they're recommending just the masking, which you said all along, is one of the most effective. But pretty much, if you have been vaccinated, after 5 days, they're saying, if you have symptoms and you're free, from fever or whatever, 24 hours without the use of medication, you can end the isolation. What are your thoughts around all of these changes that we're hearing?
Well, again, I think that, and I understand the messaging. The
Hmm.
messaging is to reduce alarm regarding COVID-19. And
Okay.
in many ways, I can get in line with a lot of what they're saying. I cannot get in line with everything around the removing any protective factors,
Okay.
such as social distancing or physical distancing, and not testing if you are not symptomatic. I
Yeah.
think the
And I
key.
left that part out where they said that no longer recommending screening testing of asymptomatic people without known exposure in most common settings, which to me, could they have not worded that a little bit differently? It just seems a little complicated to say, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I think the what they want to take away, we've got a few different issues working in here.
Okay.
One is there appears to be no major funding left for COVID-19. And I have folks who are on the inside saying, well, that's not really true. But in the community sites, we're not seeing the influx of dollars that we saw initially. So that funding has dried up. So there's no bucket of money for testing.
Hmm.
So how would you prescribe testing if people can't pay for it? That's issue number one. The second thing is, because we're not seeing the great numbers of people, of fatalities from COVID-19, and we know that the majority of individuals will contract COVID and they will recover. They can recover at home in the comfort of their own home. And there's no need for alarm for the majority of the population. But that does not take away the risk for that percentage, because there's still a percentage, 20-30% of folks who could have life-threatening illness from COVID-19. So the key to keeping the most vulnerable folks safe is protection, is stopping the spread, controlling the spread. So what we're doing with this guidance is we're kind of taking our hands up and saying, every man for himself, instead of saying we are all responsible for everybody in our community. Just because I might contract COVID and be fine, I want to know if I have it, so I don't go to my grandmother's house. I don't go to my cousin's house who is battling with cancer or diabetes.
Right.
That's such. So because we are responsible for our brothers.
Yeah. Hopefully I didn't mislead anybody, because I said, to me, it's still kind of hard to follow. But one of the biggest things is they're no longer recommending those who are unvaccinated or have not received their booster shots to quarantine after any potential exposure. And that part right there, I think, kind of throws people off just a bit. But like you said, it's kind of going along to where we are. And of course, for those who have isolated, if you're in the situation where you have to isolate, if you start to feel feel worse, then you start over again. Does it seem confusing to you, these guidelines?
I mean, I understand the guidelines, and I think they're confusing because most people don't necessarily agree with them. I think there's some mislogic there. And so it's confusing because it doesn't quite make sense compared to all that we've learned historically through this pandemic. I still provide the same guidance to patients who test here at our organization. Folks in my office who test positive, I provide the same guidance that we've used before. What I do know is that the virus does not seem to last as long. Whereas in the beginning of the pandemic, we had folks who would stay positive 2, 3, 6 weeks, and they would test. I would recommend testing until they were negative. Now we're seeing that folks are clearing up in about 5 days. So that quarantine period does make sense. But you do have folks who it does linger 10 days. So I recommend to test, stay quarantined until you test negative. And it is because, if you don't, you are spreading the virus. We know that close contact with individuals who are positive will lead to other folks who are positive. So why risk the spread? I think that's the key, and maybe should be our motto: why risk the spread?
That's a good one. I like that, Dr. Black. And just, you mentioned testing, the take-home test. The Food and Drug Administration, of course, is recommending that people testing themselves at home take a repeat test within 48 hours so that they can rule out a potential false negative. Why risk the spread? To me, is very simple. A couple bullet points to outline these things, I think, would help a whole lot of people understand what we're dealing with.
One other thing I'd like to mention is, again, I think with the other mutations, we are seeing folks who are symptomatic before they test positive. So folks who are feeling flu-like symptoms, they're ill, and they run out and they get a test, and immediately they're testing negative. I tell them, wait 2 to 3 days and test again. And then they will test again, and they will 9 times out of 10 turn up positive. So again, there's still the incubation period that has not changed. We know that incubation period to be 3 to 4 days. And typically, if you're having symptoms at that point, 3 or 4 days in, you will be able to identify if it was truly COVID-19.
Well, and then one other thing real quick before we wrap things up, because the children are back in school or quickly heading back to school, the CDC is no longer recommending that schools use a test to stay system. We're testing and contact tracing in schools. I mean, where is this taking us? Because everybody's headed back now into these situations where they're going to be in large groups. Masks are not going to be required. At least I haven't seen any school system that's talking about re-implementing that. The ventilation system, maybe they got it improved over the summer. Who knows? But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, if you look at the environment and the status of the schools, you have many schools who are understaffed. We work closely with several school systems providing their mental health services, and
Mhm.
there are many schools who are 11, 12 teachers short.
Yeah.
So they're wondering what are they going to do when the doors open. Some of the charter schools have already reopened this week,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
they're short staffed. So if you have no resources, have no additional funding, and you're short staffed, how are you going to implement all of the strategies that we put in place to keep our children safe? And you have children who are struggling, who are
Yeah.
very behind. And we're looking at, in the hierarchy of needs that each school has, COVID-19 is down here.
Right.
Or at the beginning of the pandemic, I told you, communities of color they have 99 problems, and COVID ain't one.
Right, right.
This is the problem with the schools, is that there are so many layers and layers of issues that each school is facing. And to add the requirements for COVID-19, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, that is not what I'm
Right.
saying. I'm saying the environment is they have no resources to do
Uh,
any of that right now.
good point. So thank you as always, Dr. Trasha Black, Groundwater Solutions, Genesis Project, groundwater-solutions.org. As we wrap things up, what's going on with you all?
Oh my goodness, what's not going on with
Yeah.
us? We are working all over the state trying to get Genesis Project, Groundwater Solutions, and other providers of color ready for this Medicaid transition in
Okay.
December. And it is a heavy lift, and we're just working hard. I've got folks working around the clock. And so I'd ask this community just to be in prayer, lift us up, lift other providers around the state, so that we have the resources that we need to launch in December.
Well, we certainly appreciate you. 704-596-0505, groundwater-solutions.org. Dr. Trasha Black, I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
each and every week. Thank you for your support as well. And if there's not anything else, I certainly say, as always, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a blessed day, everybody.
All right, you do the same. So there you have it. Great opportunity again to get some valuable information. I think I was kind of confusing myself, all these different guidelines that are now in place, and this change and that change, and how do we do this and how do we do that? So a great opportunity for us to work on, and I'm referring to Dr. Trasha Black, is what she suggested, and maybe breaking it down to just a single card that can be passed out to people so they can have an opportunity to realize, don't take that chance of take the risk of spreading it in all the different ways that you can still avoid it. But one of the most important things that's still there is masking up, which I really appreciate that. I want to take the time to also make you aware it's that time again. Yes, I want to show you what we're planning. Okay, so Parades in the Park, September 17th. You'll start hearing more and more about it, but I really hope that you'll take the time and consider joining. Share with others, let them know. We'll be at Smithville Park in Cornelia. 16 years now I've been doing this. Pastor John P. Key, again, is the headliner. Tonight, I will be in Matthews at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist. Reverend Larry Whitley, the pastors of Matthews, they embrace me, and I appreciate that. Every time they're hosting a community forum. And tonight, it's Women of Color, Let's Talk. So I'm glad to be the moderator. It kicks off at 7 a.m. Did I say 7 a.m.? 7 p.m. 7 p.m. again. Women of Color, Let's Talk. I'll be in Matthews at Mount Moriah. Uh, Reverend Larry Whitley is the pastor, but all the pastors of Matthews, they come together and host these conversations. I would say this program is the blueprint for how to hold conversations, especially around racism and coming together, since we experience so much division. Hey, folks, it's time for me to move out of the way. As always, life's challenges make you better, not bitter. I will see you on this Saturday, 10 a.m. Check in with me, Sounds of Inspiration on Praise 100.9. And of course, any event happening in the community, I'm always trying to uplift and share that with you as well. Thanks for tuning in. It's Canceling COVID. We appreciate you every Tuesday at 11 a.m. because working together, real talk, real people, resources, they are real as well. we can work together to cancel COVID. Thank you again for hopping on. Have a great day, everyone.